was passed through the fire and in order to become a warrior, but it wasn't just going through the crucible. There also had to be some ambrosia involved, right? This sort of nectar or elixir of immortality, something that allows things that are beautiful and wonderful to be preserved in perpetuity in a way that is almost mythic. So I just want to say that this is about pictures, and it's also I want to highlight that a lot of times there's apps that in terms of breadth versus depth, and it's beautiful to see things that do a couple of things really elegantly and well. I think you're in for a treat. This is Team Ambrosia.
Hey guys, I'm Calvin. So my aunt and uncle about 5 or 6 years ago did their dream thing, and they retired and they sold their home in the UK and they bought an old chateau, 500-year-old chateau in Chinon, France, and they were restoring it for the past 5-6 years. My girlfriend and I went to visit it last summer, and it was beautiful. And then so I have all these pictures because we both have iPhones, and we take a bunch of pictures. And here's a situation whenever I'm showing it to anybody. It's like, and not sharing it online, but like if I'm like, hey, come look at these pictures. And what ends up happening is I go on Facebook, I have this grid of images with tiny little thumbnails, and I'm kind of going like, so I'll pick this picture and show it, I'll pick this picture and show it. When really I have about 65 to 70 pictures of my experience, I'm only showing like 6 or 7 to the person there, and then at the end I'm like, so that was my trip. And at the end I'm like, I just wish there's a better way to do it. Like, it shouldn't be little thumbnails. It shouldn't be shown. Your experience is a full view of what you did. Like, this is your brother's wedding. This is something that you did that's really special to you. And it shouldn't just be this thing that looks like an Excel table. So I pitched that we should make something really beautiful that expresses the whole experience of everything. And it should be amazingly elegant, and it should be something that is so nice people will be like, I didn't even know you could do that on the internet. And so we made Ambrosia.
All right, so kind of one of the core features is that a lot of these things on the side are essentially loaded with images. So this is Calvin's experience, for example. It has all sorts of cool different effects, and each one of these screens is essentially a panel, right? And a lot of the fun that we had was going through and being able to create different panels that really personalize our way of viewing images. Right? And so a lot of fun with putting together different views that loaded cool different effects, waterfalls sometimes. So one of the things this actually started originally as a food app, so we wanted to highlight food, and so it's an opportunity to really take photos and give them the life and breath that they have. But before we kind of dive into the app, I want to talk a little bit about how we started this thing. How did the journey begin? And so Alex will walk us through that.
Yeah. When we started 8 days ago, we had some design decisions to make. Some tough and some not so tough. Not so tough one was our backend. We chose Rails. It's fast, it's powerful, widely used, we're familiar with it, and quite frankly, it's the only thing we know. The tough part was the front end. We were very compelled that we had to use a framework. We heard so much about it. Everyone's hyping it up. It's what's in. Everyone's using it. You got to use it. And the main two ones were React and Angular. An entire first day, we just spent it just researching both of them. Came across words like virtual DOM, two-way binding. Our heads were exploding. And that whole day just going back and forth. React, Angular, up until we went to bed. And then next morning, during our stand-up, we asked the question to ourselves, what do we need our app actually to do? And the answer to that question was, we need a client, in this instance Google Chrome, to hold models, views, and controllers. And coincidentally, we already knew a language that did that. That was JavaScript. So we decided to stick with what we know, refine our skills in it, avoid the huge learning curve, learning a framework, and as far as design, we chose CSS and also incorporated jQuery. And as we developed the app, we also included plugins such as Masonry, Full Page, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. And with that, we'd like to share our experience building this app.
Cool. So we're going to start with a couple different. Actually, before this, you'll see on the sidebar we have these little cool bubble fish things. And one really cool thing that we really enjoyed playing with was the scrolling ability of this. And so you kind of demonstrate the scrolling and you click and drag. One of the cool things about my iPhone is when I scroll on something and lift my finger up, it keeps scrolling with a little bit of momentum, right? There's some like physics and math involved. And so we found a very cool plugin called jQuery Kinetic, which allows us to take the sidebar and make it draggable. It was a very, very cool tool. The other cool thing about the sidebar is you'll notice that as things get to the top, they actually shrink in size. And that was actually a hand-rolled piece of JavaScript that required a lot of thinking about math, thinking about where the bubble is on the page, doing a calculation of every single bubble on the page, and then saying, oh, I'm right here, I probably need to be smaller. So doing the math for that was something, I'm a huge nerd, so I love that stuff. So we had a lot of fun with a little sidebar. But once the sidebar was created, we really wanted to give users the ability to essentially create their experiences and actually put them in this far right panel. So we'll start with creating an experience. The group before us took the same picture we're going to use, but we're going to reflect and be emotional about our time at DVC. It might reject that. So this dialog box is something that's really, really cool. We didn't want images to be something you just have to click the browse button or whatever. So this thing has two ways of adding things to it. You can either click on it, or you can drag a file directly in from outside the browser window into this thing. So as it drags, it gives you this very satisfying little check mark that says, hey, I've successfully uploaded to Amazon S3. This, like the thing on the side, was also just a very cool little plugin called Drop Zone. You can just apply it to an area and turn it into a drop zone. So here you have the ability to add captions to your images. Some pictures are worth 1,000. This one probably could be summed in a couple fewer words. Frogs. So if we go to add this caption, and you close out and actually click on this experience, find it where it went. So there we go. Somewhere. There we are. Cool. So here's us, right? And if you actually want to add effects to it, we can actually go into this manage mode, create a new panel. Just a panel's already there. That's not it. Is it? Okay. In this panel, you'll actually see that the photo is over here. There's a draggable implementation where you can move it back. You can move it back.
Maybe remove the panel and add it again.
Maybe if we remove the panel and add it again, that's a smart decision. And so here I might be able to pick from all the different variety of things that we've selected and created. I like the full screen faded overlay. Once this is saved, you can actually go back and view the panel with effects. I think this is a different image that we uploaded earlier with a different caption. But so that's kind of the core functionality of it. There's a lot of different panels that we created, and I'll do all sorts of different things. But one of the ones that we're really excited about is this thing called masonry, which Steve focused a lot on. So he's going to talk a little bit about masonry.
Right, thanks, David. So we really, once we had a beautiful navigation system set up, we really set about thinking about how are we going to dynamically display a user's pictures, right? So we talked about using various jQuery animations, CSS3 has animations built in, and we ultimately came across a plugin. This is a JavaScript library called Masonry, and essentially how it works is it places photos on the screen in vertical slices, not vertical slices, but in positions relative to the vertical space available. So you can kind of think of how a bricklayer might lay bricks, right? So this was a JavaScript library that was relatively simple to implement on its own. Calvin will talk about some of the challenges we had with integrating plugins together. But if you, one cool feature that we can demonstrate now is if you click on a picture, it expands and all the rest of the pictures reorganize themselves. So your pictures are never hiding behind each other, and you always have the ability to see them enlarged or to see multiple pictures in the same window together. So we thought this is a really nice way to start.
So the full page is another JavaScript plugin that you see the little dot on the right side. It moves and it kind of connects with it, and you can use the up and down arrows to move to the next image. And one of the really interesting things about working on this project is there's actually a lot of depth, and there's actually very elaborate on the in all its JavaScript. And so the full page did not like having its own page. Full page is only designed to work on its own. And then it did not like working with masonry, and masonry didn't like it the other way, and it didn't like so we're trying to work with a bunch of different technologies that really don't like working together. So we had to really go in deep, and we were at this position where it's like, do we decide between one or the other? And we decided to hack it. So we went into the source code, and we tried to figure out exactly how it worked and why it thinks whether it's in a page or not, and we actually had to edit parts of the source code to be compatible with what we did, going through hundreds of lines of code trying to figure out what we can change, what we can edit, and what the effects would be. And we kind of, we have to talk about the CSS, because I don't think we've done justice in talking about how much CSS is hand-rolled in this. We didn't use a framework for CSS. We took little things like some ideas from online, some snippets, but like there are so many files, so many CSS files that we had to generate. Coordinate, guys, CSS is no joke. It's a huge part of the user experience, and it's its own framework. You have to stay organized. It's a huge tree. Remember, these are all global variables, and they all have to be communicating with each other all the time.
Cool. So, kind of in conclusion, we want to walk you through a little bit of the development process. You know, beautiful web apps aren't built in 7 days, which is why this is only partially beautiful, perhaps. But one of the cool things we had here was showing off, you know, like I really wanted to show what this looked like on the second day. And so I was really proud of the Christmas bubbles when we first created them. They were able to scroll. But like, you know, this is what web pages look like sometimes early on. Maurice gave me a great look. He said, I'm not going to help you with this until you take the yellow screen off. But it started to evolve, you know, we started to make real pictures with nice little clear orbs. You know, then we tried to fill them with images, but that didn't work out so well. Squares. But at the end, we were able to really bring something that was pretty immersive, something that we're very proud of, very beautiful, and really showed off the beauty of the app and all the things that you can do with just JavaScript and CSS. So, you know, the little pitch here is that this app is available on Heroku. The link's not up here, so you'll probably have to ask us for it. But we're excited for people to start, you know, putting their images up there and kind of sharing them with the world.
Could you talk a little bit about image hosting and the S3 or any of that stuff? The challenges?
Sure, we can talk about that. So S3 has a lot of craziness that goes on with it. The simplest implementation of S3 is you take your images, which are happening on the front end, you send them remotely to the Rails backend. It says, okay, I have these images, now I can send them to S3, right? Heroku has this thing called the ephemeral file system where like they just delete their stuff every once in a while. And so we were really afraid that the images might get lost, or if they're temporary, they might not upload if they're like bigger images, and we were expecting eventually to be able to add like videos and stuff. And so we tried really hard to make the browser send it straight to S3 without sending it back to Rails. And that was quite a long process. There were points of derailment. But ultimately, I think we went back to the simple solution. And so S3 essentially has a series of commands that allows you on the back end, and Ruby has a gem that allows you to pretty easily send something from Ruby once it gets there to the Amazon server. Also, keep your keys private. You get a lot of trouble with that.
Incidentally, if you're looking for ideas for your Phase 3 project, there's a gem called S3 Direct Upload. It doesn't do what it says. But it's not like anything like as comprehensive as it should be, so consider it seriously. Like look into it.
Anything else?
Cool. Thanks, everyone.